So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome Executive Director at the Sasha Group, Mark Evans. So welcome, Mark.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So Mark, congratulations on all your achievements. Can you please share with our audience your journey and how you got into your current role at the Sasha Group?
Sure. I think I always wanted to go into the world of advertising and marketing. Most of my studies in undergrad was focused on that. So when I got out of school, I directly kind of went toward advertising. I think originally I thought I would get more into the world of copywriting, but I ended up going into client service and strategy. And so I spent, my career, everywhere I've worked so far has always been kind of in the agency world, based in New York City, and really kind of, grew through the client services role, and then started being able to lean more in strategy roles. I got into digital really early, which was really enjoyable for me because I was able to really kind of see and watch how it's grown over the years and be able to help kind of drive change in leadership within the space. I came to the Vayner world about 5.5 years ago. I was introduced to Gary by a friend of mine who had worked with me, and I had a 20-minute conversation with Gary and really hit it off and felt that where he wanted to take Vaynermedia and where I wanted to go really made a lot of sense. And so from that point on, I've been working within kind of the Vayner world, spending a couple years within Vaynermedia and then being able to roll out into our newest company, the Sasha Group.
Amazing. So your career has been predominantly focused on solving client business challenges. Can you please share with us more about this and give us some examples?
Absolutely. I think you should always be aware of how the business works that you're working with. Even if you're doing just the marketing for them or the advertising for them, really being able to understand kind of the nuts and bolts. And so, the majority of my career has been working with Fortune 500 companies, and there's only so much you can be able to do as being an advertising, company within, a Fortune 500 organization. But I always try to, take the time to be able to, anything from paying attention to news around stock or the category, just being able to understand, what the company was doing, and then being able to, always think about how we can maximize the work we were doing for them from an advertising perspective and how they can be better leveraged. So, for instance, many times being able just to say to them, like, hey, your call center script, can be augmented a bit based upon kind of the larger tonality we're trying to create with the brand, and being able to, think through those touch points, or being able to look at, when we're creating something, how can that be used beyond just the medium that we're focused on, and being able to try to act as a bit of a connector, because many times in these larger organizations, people, within their own team don't speak to each other, let alone when you think about it outside of that. So really being able to take the time to understand the organization, be able to connect the people, within the organization, and try to act as a bit of a dot connector for them. I kind of leap ahead to kind of the work that we're doing with the Sasha Group, and that, we're working with companies outside the Fortune 500, and so, I'm working directly, oftentimes with the CEO or the founder, and so you really have a much deeper access to the business. And so, I've been able to work with, the CEOs, for instance, to be able to really look at how they're spending their time and be able to help them better organize themselves and better focus themselves based upon the growth of their company and the needs of their company. Because oftentimes you soon look at these larger companies, or these companies that are growing larger, the CEO is trying to do everything and trying to be able to get them focused on where they can have the most impact and then where they need to be able to hire. Furthermore, even looking at, many times with these companies, just understanding how they communicate internally and the processes they have internally, and being able to bring insight and advice of how to be able to make that more effective and smoother in their kind of how they deliver it. And then finally, certainly looking into, everything from, packaging and SKUs and being able to help them, better think about kind of their overall portfolio of products. And so that's been really enjoyable for me within Sasha, because you're able to touch a lot more than, you traditionally can be able to access when you think about kind of larger Fortune 500 companies and how they work with their advertising agencies.
Wow, that's amazing. And obviously, so you go a lot deeper than just, in many aspects of the business, which is great. So,
Yep.
So can you share with us your process? So when you close a client, and what do you believe is different about your skill and leadership style? And can you give us some examples?
Yeah. When we're talking with new clients, I really try to take as much time as possible to truly understand what the real business challenges are, what they're reaching out to us for. Because oftentimes, after you speak with them for a little while, it's kind of like you thought it was this, but it actually is that. And that really comes from listening and being able to not just rush to get a scope of work in front of them, but to truly understand how you can drive impact and change for them. Many of the companies we're working with don't have insane disposable budgets. Like the dollars really need to work hard. And so for anything that I'm going to recommend to them, I want to make sure it's going to be able to drive impact. And so it really is spending, a large amount of time really making sure I understand the situation and the challenges they're facing and all the variables that go with it, so that whatever we're bringing back to them is actually going to be a change, for the better. And so I think that's a big thing for us, is really being able to act as true partners to anyone we work with, and truly being able to understand where they're going from a long-term vision, and if it makes sense for us, to partner together. It's funny enough, there's many clients over the past, year or so since we've started Sasha Group that I've said to them, hey, you know what, go do X, Y, and Z, which are, here's some free content or some free tools that you can get from the web. Go do that first before you pay me any money. Because that's where you're at right now. It's you don't need to pay me just to do this. You could probably do this. And so I think building that trust with the people that we're working with, whether they're signing a scope with us now or maybe a year from now, but really just doing right by them. And that really comes from taking the time to listen and truly understand where they're going with their company, and being honest and objective of how you can be able to help them.
Of course, and also just being transparent in your communication, which is really great. So
absolutely.
So what are some of your biggest lessons and learnings been in your career?
I think the first kind of thing I learned, and I believe to this day, it's never underestimate hard work, and really being able to put in the time and bringing passion to what you do. When I look at early in my career, when you think about anyone in a junior role, you're not hiring them because they know everything, because they don't know everything yet. They're still a junior individual. But I really look at, having that kind of heart for the cause, having enthusiasm and willing to be able to be kind of first in, last out kind of mentality, really helped me quite a bit. And really being able to learn and speak to as many people from as many departments as possible, and just kind of act as a sponge. And so I think really that hard work and that learning is something that you should always carry with you throughout your entire career. I think something you said earlier too around honesty. Really being honest. Early in my career, I remember a colleague I had wasn't totally truthful about a situation with a client, and I had a good relationship with the client, and I remember him calling me later that week, and he said to me, he's like, I know what this person's saying is probably incorrect. I know that they're not being, totally transparent with me. Don't ever do that. It's like, it's just not going to, it's like, that's not the way it works.
It doesn't work in your favor at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. He's like, I remember him saying to me that, you need to come in if there's a problem, tell me how you're going to help solve it. And be, and like, he's like, I welcome that much better than someone deceiving me and me knowing that. So, a lot of these things, when I think about business and working with human beings, it's just about like the basic fundamentals of like being honest and transparent and communicative and caring about them. A lot of things that we as humans should always be, that sometimes are forgotten about when you walk into the walls of your place of work. So, really trying to be able to just check the box on being, open, honest, communicative, and really kind of working hard to get something done. And leading by example. I think I've often seen, I've looked at through managers I've had throughout my career, and whether I like them or dislike them, I've taken away something from them, and that's helped sculpt who I am. There's some styles which I hated and other styles I loved. And I've used that in how I've managed people or how I've, kind of sculpted or created my own career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So before you took the lead role at the Sasha Group, how was the transition from Vaynermedia into your current role at the Sasha Group?
It was definitely a fun, interesting change. So the really cool thing about working with Gary Vaynerchuk is that Gary really has a finger on the pulse of the employees and really kind of where their head's at and what's really interesting to them. And so Gary and I had been speaking for a little while during, at Vayner, I was leading a lot of larger, portfolio type clients. And I had said to Gary that I was getting a little bit, bored with where I was at. There wasn't something that like was really stoking the fire within me. And I truly love what I do. And Gary one day approached me and was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about building out some consulting offerings for small to medium-sized businesses. Do you want to help build it?" And it was funny because I'm a marketer by trade, and Gary's like, "Yeah, you're going to have to learn and read and to be able to help continue to round out your expertise." But it was something going into a brand new market with a brand new offering and kind of giving the opportunity to be able to build that. And so that was really fun. So when I look at like Vaynermedia, I was running these large global campaigns. I then shifted into working with companies that were a fraction of the size. And
but that's sometimes really nicer in a way because you're actually growing with those companies.
You're absolutely right. And I think the thing that I found also, it's like many of these companies were, working with, C or D level regional companies. And, when we started working with them, I was bringing a vast amount of experience that they hadn't been exposed to, just from the fact that I've been in New York City working with large brands my entire life. And so being able to bring that expertise with them and couple that with like the enthusiasm and energy that they had is really kind of a fun, an intellectually stimulating thing for me. And so really being able, it's funny, I never predicted I'd be in the spot that I'm in right now. I always thought that I was going to go down this certain path. And this pivot has been one that I've truly enjoyed. And it's been both, I've learned a tremendous amount just about businesses, and because of how close I work with them, but also I've just made a lot of great relationships with people that are just, coming up and building cool companies.
Yes. And also I think the key thing always is about relationship building, because you can be as good as you want to be, but if you don't have the relationships, it's very challenging. So.
Yes, building that trust and that relationship is paramount for any successful partnership.
So that leads me to the next question. So social media has impacted and changed the media and advertising industry and personal branding. It has a positive, it's had a positive and negative effect or impact. when dealing with brands and clients, what do you believe as a group you do more responsibly, and when using these platforms for clients, and can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I mean, it's social media has really been, a really interesting advertising vehicle and tool and a vehicle to be able to communicate with audiences. I think for us, it kind of first comes back to understanding, our clients, who the audience they're reaching, they're connecting with, or they want to communicate with, to sell a product, service, whatever the case may be, and understanding their business objectives and figuring out the best platforms to be able to do that on. I think too often you have, agencies or companies recommending to client, kind of chasing unicorns, going after every platform. More so, more so being a bit more focused and really being able to say, like, okay, how's this going to be able to help drive against our business objective? And really being able to take a measured test and learn approach to how they're investing their dollars. So I think really being mindful and aware of like, this is where their audience is spending their time, and this is where the attention is. And this is gonna allow us to be able to better communicate or speak to an audience that can be able to help move the needle for us. Too many companies are often like, hey, let me jump on that platform, and it's like, yeah, that platform is for 19-year-old kids versus and your audience
or whatever,
exactly, your audience is boomers. So really being able to be objective in how we're thinking about platforms, understanding where the attention is, how addressable the audience is on the platform. So from a paid perspective, what type of data do we have that we can be able to leverage to drive relevant advertising within that platform? Because there's many platforms that people are spending their time at, but depending on if there's no ad product there or the limitations around communication, really being able to figure out what makes the most sense from a time and kind of cost investment on those platforms. So continually knowing who your kind of core platforms are, but then also understanding where your secondary or emerging platforms are and keeping an eye on them and being willing to shift dollars if it makes sense based upon kind of the business case and where your audience is.
Yes, absolutely. So what would you say your biggest career highlights have been?
That's fun. It's a good question. I think when I look at probably around 2007, I was starting, some of the brands I was working on, we were really starting to do a lot in the beginning of social media. So whether it was YouTube, early days of Facebook, but really being able to, Twitter, being able to, I think, get on platforms early and being able to be a part of thinking through how brands were going to communicate with audiences on platforms that we were still learning as users was really fun. And being able to think through kind of tips and like little hacks that we were doing as users that were like, hey, you know what, we can actually apply that to this brand and it makes sense on communication. So I think like learning platforms as users, but then also learning how we're going to market and communicate on them was some of the stuff that I really, really enjoyed. From that birth of social media. I think outside of that, being able to help build departments and products have been really, really fun. So being able to think about like, okay, what is our role within the larger organization or the agency? And then how do we, sell what we can be able to deliver or bring to clients, and figuring out, and tinkering with that. I think I've really enjoyed the process of saying like, oh, here's something that clients have asked about. We don't have that yet. How do we package that? It's something going to bring them value. And so I think that's been really, enjoyable for me. So I think being able to help build departments, build kind of how we sell that department has been enjoyable. And then it's always, going back to my earlier point about the work and being able to do, first to market type work was really fun early on, and really being able to prove the value of digital, and being able to show that it could bring the scale or the effectiveness that early on many people were saying wasn't there.
Yes. So that leads me to the next question around leadership. So leadership or lack of leadership, what do you believe on a business and global level we need to do to change the current narrative?
I think it comes back to like informed leadership.
Yes.
I think too often you have leaders that aren't truly aware of what's needed to succeed based upon the challenges they have in front of them. And oftentimes it's due to lack of education, or in terms of what the capabilities are that exist out there, or their own potential fear of being able to not be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And so I believe it's really about, I've watched how the role of the CMO has evolved with the growth, with the creation of kind of digital, and for how many years so many CMOs were so against digital because they knew TV and print. And so it was a lot of kind of dinosaurs being stuck. Yeah, like dinosaurs being stuck in the tar, if you will. And so, being informed, and being aware of what sort of marketing capabilities exist out there, where your audience is spending time, and really leveraging that data to prove that out. I think as more and more data exists for us as marketers, how can we focus on what really is needed from a data perspective, and being able to be objective of how we think about our decisions around advertising and marketing vehicles to connect with our audience.
Yes. So you did touch on it in this question, but obviously I'm going to elaborate. So prior to working at VaynerX, you have worked with some of the biggest agencies during your time. At these agencies, you were the trailblazer, and your focus was, to be blazing new digital trails for Fortune 500 companies. So what would you say when dealing with the agencies who have done things traditionally for so long? How did you find the transition when driving the digital aspect of the business, and did you find resistance within these companies?
Oh, did I find resistance?
Especially Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say early on, going back to, 07, 08, 09, 2010, to be able to get myself invited to meetings oftentimes when I was working within a 360 agency environment was always challenging, because they were like, hey, we don't believe in digital. And that was the narrative that they would push to the clients, and the clients would agree. I think, I really worked to kick down as much doors as possible, and I did that kind of through like trying to be as much of a team player as possible, and being able to demonstrate what digital was going to bring, or how that was going to complement my other colleagues and what they were bringing, whether it was print, TV, out of home, whatever the case, direct mail, whatever the case may be. And so really trying to be able to prove that, like, hey, a rising tide is going to lift all ships. Like, if we can be able to come in and even a small portion of the budget can be used on digital to be able to help, tackle this challenge, I think it can really be able to help us out overall and being seen as a more comprehensive solution from our agency. And so really trying, to be able to educate and inform. I did a lot of that, and doing that in a definitely a collaborative and in the best mindset of possible. And really being able to, not have my, agency partners or colleagues, be, fearful that I was coming in to steal their budget or something like that. Really being able to go back to, hey guys, this is going to help drive better solutions for our clients. And in turn, it's going to help us as an agency. If we're able to help them, they will hopefully spend more dollars with us. And so it was really about, trying to educate, trying to inform, trying to be kind of a team player to be able to help, drive, things forward, and then not getting, frustrated. There were many situations that didn't work out. I would come in and pitch, and they'd say, hey, you know what, not right now, or we'll think about that later. So you have to be able to, have a short-term memory, and not get too caught up or I say too, down on yourself if something doesn't go through. It's about kind of continually kind of pushing against the tide to be able to help reverse that tide.
And to help change the mindset as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would say those years, I remember I would send out, I don't know how many, Ad Age or Ad Week or any sort of digital article I could find. I was constantly surfacing that to clients and colleagues just to be able to continually inform them of what was going on in the space and how we could potentially leverage it.
Yes. So what are some of the most exciting projects you have worked on with clients, and do you have any great project you're working on now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about the work that I'm doing right now because it's so diverse. We're helping, some clients we're helping to think through their brand and what it stands for and the naming of their brand so they can be able to launch that product.
Yes.
For other clients, being able to think through like, hey, we need to recalibrate a bit because the marketplace is changing and our category is changing and how people are consuming our product is changing, and being able to rethink that. So there's the bringing something brand new, and there's also kind of the pivot point of being able to say like, hey, we need to maybe rethink, if for instance the company was selling primarily through a distributor, but being able to think about, hey, do we want to go down the DTC route, and what does that look like? And so I'm really enjoying kind of being able to think about the brand new coming to market, but also how do we, recalibrate someone that's been in the market for a while. And that stuff has been really enjoyable so far because I've been able to touch a lot of different categories, and no two businesses are the same.
No, exactly. So that leads me to the last two questions. So what are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and what legacy would you like to leave, and what is the biggest vision or your biggest vision for the Sasha Group?
In terms of the pieces of advice, I think over this last, year and a half of Sasha Group, I've been able to really speak with a lot of different entrepreneurs and people starting up companies, people that establish, SMBs. And I think the first thing I always, talk with them about is understanding, like, what's their end game? Like, where do they want to take this company? You think about things very differently if you're looking to sell this company to private equity or get acquired in 5 years versus, like, I think about, like, Gary and what Gary's vision for Vayner. Gary wants to be able to, buy the jets.
The jets,
for him, for him, he wants to be able to build this, machine. And you take a very different approach when you're building something for, the long term versus the short term. So I think first, really understanding kind of your end game. The second one is really the importance of surrounding yourself with giants. Really being able to have objective individuals that complement you. So I think too often what I see with a lot of with entrepreneurs or founders or CEOs, and I mentioned this earlier, is that, like, they're trying to do everything on their own. And, I think being able to understand when does it make sense to be able to start building out your kind of circle of leadership, and being able to find people that are right, that can look at your skill set and what's lacking and where you can be able to bring someone to be able to help complement that. So really being able to surround yourself with strong leaders. And then finally, and this is one that I get a chuckle out of also when I speak with founders. I get these they tell me these amazing stories about things that have changed their life or why they created something. And I say to them, like, why aren't you talking about that in the digital space? Why don't you could have a podcast, you could do content on YouTube, like, and oftentimes they're like, well, they say to me, well, no one wants to hear that. I'm like, you're wrong.
Yes, it's the power of storytelling.
Absolutely. And so it's like, I think with entrepreneurs, like, don't underestimate your personal story and the personal brand that you can be able to create, especially when you think about products. Like, people right now, I think so many people are curious about the products they're buying and the stories behind that. And I think when you look at a smaller startup company versus this Goliath, Fortune 500 company, is that, like, you can be able to be incredibly transparent and talk to them directly and have that connection and tell that story. So it's like, don't forget about that, really understand, and that becomes a unique selling point for your brand, really, for people to be able to, and that's what, for so many people, like, they connect with the leaders of companies, and that's really why you start, becoming very loyal to those companies. So I would say those are probably the three pieces of advice that kind of come to top of mind. In terms of your second question around legacy.
I know some people don't like that question because they kind of feel it's a bit cliche, but I mean, I think people do want to leave something in terms of, what they've done, or be able to show in some level of impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I used to joke around with colleagues to say, like, if when I come to the end of my life and the best thing that I can say is I drove, I drove lower CPMs or clicked, I'm going to be disappointed with myself. I think that I definitely want to be, remembered or people that I work with as, like, an honest individual, somebody who can be able to, listen to where they're at, what they need, and be able to bring a degree of expertise to be able to help get them there. And also being honest in the fact of, like, what I know and I don't know. I'm very mindful of never selling someone something that I know I can't deliver on. So I think being known as, like, an honest and hardworking individual, and somebody who had a fun time with what they did. I think we work in an amazing industry, and we can do a lot of really fun stuff. And I think being able to, enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it is really kind of important. So just being known as somebody who works hard, honest, and can have a good laugh.
Yes, of course. And enjoy the journey, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, it's funny, when I look at Sasha Group, for us, we're now in year 2, and year 1 was just, remarkable in terms of just the people we were able to work with, the business that we were able to work with. And, for year 2, it's about kind of continuing to scale, ourselves, and really being able to be seen as a business partner to help grow companies. I want us to be known. I want to be able to have us, help incubate and grow the future Fortune 500 companies. And that's really, when I look at the coming years of how we can be able to have a lens on where the industries are going, and being able to work with companies that are reshaping industries and being a part of that, and being able to help them grow and outgrow us. I think the funny thing about Sasha Group is that, we look at ourselves as, like, we want to get our clients in and have them grow so they outgrow us, and they either, go work with Vaynermedia, or, they take it all in-house on their own. But really being able to have somebody and build something with a company and have them, grow. So I think being known as a growth engine is really key for me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing so much and for your time. And hopefully we can have you back in the future to see the progress or how things are happening.
Excellent. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.